First of all, welcome everyone and welcome to Hong Kong. Um, my name is Chris Law. I'm an architect in private practice in Hong Kong. Today, what I want to share with all of us is my own very personal kind of walking journey through Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is an amazing city. I was born here over 50 years ago. Some of you that has just arrived in Hong Kong would all kind of be amazed by this picture postcard view of the city. Really dense and tall city center with country park and greenery around it within just a few kind of minutes walk. And walking is probably one of the most important activities for me. Every Sunday morning, as is kind of yesterday morning, the first thing I would do when I get up is to go for a walk. And when I kind of walk down the road, I breathe the air and I feel the sunlight, and then see the sunlight shining through the leaf of the trees, and they're all kind of shimmering. And I think that's when I start feeling alive. And for me, kind of walking is really about being alive. It's about knowing that you are there and you can feel what's happening. And in fact, if you kind of keep walking in this city, you find kind of very interesting little streets and lanes where I would discover a lot of new things happening, like this little cafe. So by walking, I find out what's happening in the city, all the new things, interesting small shops and cafes that kind of line the city. And then walking around the corner of one of the district just on this island, you see kind of old ladies kind of chatting, sitting on the steps. So it's a very social activities as well. And then round another corner, you find the burst of creativity happening in the back lane, where people would do all the paintings and the drawings or graffitis, depending on your point of view, in the back alley, and then setting up this cafe, and then burst of greenery coming up. Now, all these actually make walking one of the most pleasurable activities in Hong Kong. And then down to the street market, where you can bargain and buy food from the butchers or the fishmonger, who get all these wonderful things kind of fresh from the sea, and then you can buy really fresh meal for the day. And then this is early morning in the fruit market, and this is one of the areas that that is really full of life in Hong Kong. And if you've got a moment, if you've got a spare day, you should go and visit it. It's the fruit market on the Kowloon side. It opens early in the morning, and there are hundreds of fruit sellers, fresh fruits, straight off the pack, and then you can buy the best, the freshest, and the cheapest fruits in Hong Kong. Now, all of these things actually make Hong Kong one of the most wonderful, livable cities. In fact, if you look at the list of livable cities, or the cities with the highest kind of quality of life ranking, this particular one is ranked by Mercer's. Most of those cities are very walkable: Vienna, Zurich, Auckland, and so on. And if you look at the ranking by The Economist, again, the most walkable cities are very often the most livable cities, and the cities that are most desirable and cities that would attract investment. In fact, Hong Kong has always been one of the most walkable cities in the world. This is an old postcard of Hong Kong over 100 years ago. You can see the street is vibrant, the proportion of the street is protecting people from sharp daylight, and then there are a lot of interest. And this is Wan Chai, which is about 10 minutes from where we are, around the corner where the Wan Chai market is today. In fact, that's actually the old Wan Chai market. Again, sticking to our area in Wan Chai, this is just around the corner, Johnson Road, where the Wo Chang pawn shop, the building is still standing 100 years later. And the arcaded buildings, the wide pavement, all those actually make the street very, very walkable. And this is Pottinger Street, one of the most unique urban scenes in the world, where everything happens on this hillside street. The Row Road, no doubt Ian will talk about that later, but you can see that the Row Road has always been one of the most walkable areas in Hong Kong, with the tram running through. In fact, tram and underground and public transport is really one of the strongest points of this city. I think our city probably has the highest public transport utilization rate in the world, probably even higher than Tokyo. And that's how the city has always been. People walking in a very leisurely, pleasurable way on the street with public transport. If you walk around Hong Kong today, you can still find some of these areas. This is the district of Tai Hang, not far away from here, about 3 stops on the underground. Tai Hang is one of the remaining urban villages in Hong Kong. And then the street is full of life, extremely walkable. Very nice pavement with flower stores on the side. But you can see at the background of this photograph, when old Tai Hang is slowly being replaced by new buildings, something is not right. You can see that building at the back. Yeah, they have several floors of blank facade, and that's just car parking. Nothing. There is absolutely no interest, no life, no connection. Yeah. Take a closer look. Absolutely hostile, unwalkable environment with no human connection, no social possibility that we see in other parts of Hong Kong, especially in the older part of Hong Kong. And humane social environment is now being replaced by blank, hostile faces that say, you are not welcome. And when it's hot, it's really hot to walk. And when it rains, there is no shelter. Round the corner of the same building, you see even more new buildings. They're all like that. So our city is slowly changing. In fact, if you see it at a larger scale, you can see why this is changing. Yeah, this is one of the photographs showing a whole district being redeveloped. Now, in Hong Kong, we have always had this philosophy that it should be possible to design for cars and let cars run in and out in a very smooth way. So you design really wide road, and then between these very wide roads, you would then have pockets of so-called kind of pedestrian neighborhood. Now that has always been the philosophy for the last 30 years. Now this is the result of that philosophy. Yeah, the car-dominated mentality with little pockets of walkable or pedestrian neighborhood in between. And if you look closer, that is what we're now getting everywhere. Yeah, with these so-called pedestrian walkway, which has no interest, which are hostile and are monotonous to walk down. You have no choice but just to walk down that long pedestrian walkway, quote unquote, with no interest, no social possibility, not even landscaped. You just have to walk through because the roads are so wide. And if you are an old lady with small kids, it is actually very difficult to negotiate this kind of hostile urban environment. Yeah, if you look even closer, that's what we get, fortresses that are not permeable, that are not welcoming, that make use of a lot of air conditioning. Now, if you have a bit of time on this trip, try to spend half a day in a little enclave just an hour away from here, the old Portuguese enclave of Macau. It's been there for 400 years. Now, this is old Macau. In fact, I spend many of my weekends in Macau. You can see that this is actually one of the densest, in fact, by some measure, probably the densest urban environment in the whole world. And yet, old Macau is extremely walkable. The density doesn't make it unwalkable. The little streets, the square, the trees, the church, and the public space in front. Now, in fact, cars are actually running through it. This, what I'm photographing 2 Sundays ago, this was 2 Sundays ago, this is actually the road for the car. Yeah, the car actually runs through the piazza. Now, but they actually control the car. They actually tame the car. They don't turn that into a highway standard motorway and then put barriers and traffic cones and railings around the vehicular access. They're actually mixing people with car, but at the same time keeping car under control by the way they do the paving, by the way they give the non-specific indication to the driver to make sure that the drivers will slow down. And that actually makes one of the most walkable parts of Macau. But just 500 meters from that photograph, you see the new Macau in Taipa Island, yeah, with the new monstrosity going up. And then again, this kind of pedestrian walkway kind of flying around, these extremely wide and virtually unbridgeable and I would say unwalkable segregation between the little pockets of buildings. Again, that's another corner. This is another corner. So this is everywhere. This is the norm. Well, this graph shows the growth of motor vehicle in Hong Kong. In the last 20, 30 years, it's almost doubled. So cars are dominating. This is the length of the traffic road in Hong Kong. Again, it has doubled in the last 20 years. Well, just over the border in mainland China, this is the graph showing the number of motor vehicles in the last 20 years. On the left-hand side is 20 years ago. And on the right-hand side, you can see it's last year, yeah, 2015. We have nearly 300 million cars in mainland China now. Now, with a population of about kind of 1.3, you're talking about 1 car for every 4 people or 5 people, virtually a car per family. Now, so within the short span of 20 years, China has become a car-oriented society. And that's actually even faster than Hong Kong. Again, this shows the growth of roads in mainland China in the last 20 years. Yeah, it quadrupled. So this is what you get now, every day. This is Beijing. Yeah, if you go to Beijing today, this is your everyday encounter. Yeah, with enclave of high-rise building, and then this unbridgeable gulf between humanities. This is a photograph of some kind of new town development coming up. This is another photograph. Yeah, this is what we see every day, everywhere now. So this kind of environment is completely unwalkable. Yeah. Yes, there are pavement, yes, there are trees, but then it is extremely unpleasant to walk down and totally uninteresting to walk down. And this kind of super block mentality is now everywhere. The idea of designing big super block with pedestrian enclave in between is now the dominant ideology in new town development throughout Asia. And they don't work. Yeah, this is the reality when you get closer. Yeah. Well, now this is the projection of urbanization, both in the world and in Asia. The projection is that in the year 2005 to 2030, we would have an extra 1,100 million people living in cities, just in Asia. 1,100 million people in this kind of new town development. So what we now have is virtually an epidemic. It is an epidemic of unlivable, unwalkable city happening all over the place as the dominant development phenomenon. Just imagine the environmental, social, and humanitarian consequence of what's happening in Asia today. Well, it's not all kind of gloom and doom. There are many pockets of urban planning in Asia that are walkable, that are now moving from the dominant ideology, that are now becoming more humane and also conserving what is good, what's left of good livable city. This is an example in Taipei, Defa Street, where the local people get together and then conserve a whole district in the center of city of Taipei, and working with the government, coming up with the shops and the whole promotion Main Street program for the revitalization of the district. This is Tiong Bahru in Singapore, another example of very kind of walkable communities. This is Buckhorn in Seoul. Mixing people, pavement with cars are actually not a problem. In fact, that is preferable as far as I'm concerned. The issue is how can we keep the car under control. This is Omoto Santo in Tokyo. Many Hong Kong people like to go there for shopping trips and so on. And it's extremely pleasant environment. I also want to run through quickly a few of the projects that I've been involved in. This is the Sanlitun district in Beijing. The design of a whole district to reduce the number of cars and also to allow people to walk through. This is the master plan of the district. This is kind of in between existing 1960s style residential and embassy area. The whole development in here is designed to be permeable, full of little lanes and squares and so on. Now, the first thing we work on with our engineer Arab was to work out the temperature, wind speed, humidity of the area using CFD analysis to make sure that all the outdoor environment in terms of microclimate is pleasant and walkable. But one of the things we did in that development is to make the pavement a lot wider. We actually cancel a lane of car on the road. So instead of making road wider, we actually make the road around it narrower, and then make the pavement wider, and then start planting trees. And we work very closely with local government in achieving a more walkable environment. And that is an environment that allows people to walk through on the way to work or back from work on the way home. And then they can sit and go to the market store and then buy a glass of fruit juice or a cup of coffee on the way home. Again, reducing the width of car roads and then widening the pavement and then planting trees. The second place is in Chengdu, a city in the southwest of China, a very historic city. In our master plan, the whole area around a number of heritage buildings, again, is designed to be walkable and then connected to the underground station through a park that the developer paid to build. And then inside, there are a number of heritage buildings, the Chinese hutong, the courtyard houses. What we attempted to do was to build a whole series of lanes and alleys and squares to connect these heritage buildings so that when you walk through, you feel the story, the history of the place. So this is the entrance to the district. And then you walk through and you can see the heritage forming part of the walkable city network. And then you walk around lots of different lanes and squares. Again, with the heritage buildings all the time forming part of the city fabric. And working with the temple to help the monks to restore the temple so that the old and the new can both be revitalized. And then this is the temple lane where people can relax and then sit and play or buy an ice cream and then just watch the temple wall and meditate. So this become a place for people to relax, but also a place for people watching as well. This case is in Hong Kong, coming back to our Wan Chai district. The Star Street area, again, it is just about 10 minutes walk from here, uphill. It's the beginning of the hill, And it's also one of the oldest part of Hong Kong. In fact, in 1842, when Hong Kong was established, that was one of the earliest settlements, with the Roman Catholic from Macau coming over to Hong Kong, building the chapels and the hospital in here. Now what we did was we built a pop-up store. Now that was just for 3 weeks. It's a whole just pop-up temporary thing. And then we tell people, well, we want to improve the urban environment in the Star Street area. What do you want? What are the things that you want us to do? Now, we collected over 600, 700 pieces of opinion. What we found was that most of the people who gave opinion told us that they want to improve the walkability of the area. They don't want marbles, they don't want gold. The last thing they want was to turn it into another indoor shopping center. They said that they want to improve the railings of the steps so that older people, when they walk up the steps, they could grip the railings. And they want to improve the pavement. Now, that's exactly what we did. It is through public consultation, through participation, understanding that people really just want a slightly nicer environment. They don't want to change the character of the place. Then we drew up the plan, and then we implemented the plan. So again, at lunchtime, if you've got a moment, pop up to Star Street, and then you can visit the little stores or just walk around and do nothing and just kind of feel the atmosphere of the place. The little lanes, when we put up new buildings, we maintain the little lanes. In fact, we deliberately design really narrow lane, and at the end of the narrow lane, there would be kind of courtyards, places that you can discover, and public spaces that people can use. We work with a historian to find out the history of the place and then put it onto signage so that when people go there, they have a sense of history. And the street could be turned into a fashion show catwalk. So you virtually turn the street into a runway. This is all community organized activities. Everyone, including the model, the fashion designers, they're all volunteers. No one gets paid for it, and it is completely non-commercial. People come and do concerts. Again, everything is voluntary, and it's community-based. The last case is the beginning of Hong Kong, Aberdeen. It's called香港仔. It's called Little Hong Kong. That's an old fishing village, and now become quite a vibrant part of the city on the south side of the island. In this case, what we research on and develop is the role of storytelling or narrative in walkability. We sent a team down into the fishing village and spent 3 or 4 months looking up stories of people who are doing wonderful things in Aberdeen, stories of people, artists who are living there, stories of the fishing harbor. We collected lots and lots of stories. The stories of the Jumbo. In fact, it's kind of world famous, the Jumbo seafood restaurants, all of these. And through finding out stories, we also invite people to come and tell their stories. Let's say on a Sunday afternoon, you come to the waterfront, the promenade. And people doing all kinds of things. Now what we did was to turn the whole thing into a mobile application. So it's called iDiscovery. you can then go onto your mobile phone, click onto or download iDiscovery, and then download the Aberdeen Walk. And it's all free. Yeah. Once you downloaded it, then we'll give you a walking map, and then along the walking map, along the route, we'll give you the stories of all the different spots and the people who live there, and the little noodle shops or cafe or artist studio along your walking route. So this is an attempt to link storytelling with mobile application, with mobile walking routes. So again, download iDiscovery and see for yourself. This is the last slide. This is a view of Pottinger Street taken by the famous photographer Ho Fan in the 1950s. Now Ho Fan he's a wonderful photographer, and this photograph captured the spirit of the city. The city built on a hill, the city of Victoria, and the city with all kinds of interesting things happening, trading, people working really hard, the intrigue, the seduction, the contrast of well-to-do people with working people. And it's all that in one photograph. So when we try to design a livable and walkable city, yes, we would do all the scientific stuff, we'll do all the checklist stuff, we'll do all the KPI stuff. But I think the most important thing is actually not the checklist. It is really to go back to the root of the city, to go back to the spirit of the city. I think Hong Kong has always been one of the most livable, amazing, intriguing, and walkable cities. And moving through the city has always been a great pleasure. And I think as long as we can really understand the DNA of Hong Kong and really develop the city, starting from a firm foundation of its original spirit, I think Hong Kong would flourish. I think Hong Kong would become not only one of the most walkable cities in the world, but actually one of the most desirable cities to live in, to invest in, and also one of the cities that would hopefully be an exemplar, be a paragon for other developing Asian cities. Thank you.